Welcome to episode 123 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we continue with the Last Tantalides with the story of Agamemnon is Avenged, Part 2. Clytemnestra turned from her daughter and went up to the altar of Apollo, which stood in front of the palace, as before every Argive house, to protect the walls and the street. Her sacrifice was intended to propitiate the god of prophecy, who had sent her the dream which had frightened her during the past night. And it seemed that the god wished to favor her. Hardly had she completed the rites when a stranger approached, the tireswoman who had accompanied her, and asked for the palace of Aegisthus. When they pointed the queen out to him, he bowed to her and said, "Hail, Clytemnestra! I have come with welcome news for you and your husband and your friends. I am sent by King Strophius of Phanote. Orestes is dead. That is what I have been sent to tell you." "These words mean death to me," moaned Electra, and sank down on the steps. "Repeat what you said," cried Clytemnestra, hastily leaving the altar. "Do not mind that foolish girl. Tell me everything. Tell me." "Your son, Orestes," said the stranger, "went to the sacred games at Delphi, for he was driven by the thirst for glory. When the herald announced the beginning of the foot races, he stepped forward, and he was so radiant that all marveled at him. Before anyone even saw him start, he had reached the goal, running like wind or lightning. He won, and the name of Argive Orestes, son of Agamemnon, conqueror of Troy, was proclaimed as the victor. This was on the first day of the games. But the strongest man cannot escape his fate if the gods choose to bewilder him. The next morning, when the chariot races were to begin at rise of sun, he was again among the contestants. They were all Achaeans, a Spartan, and two men from Libya with great experience in driving of the horses. Orestes, with his 4 Thessalonian horses, was the 5th. After him came an Aetolian with 4 bays. The 7th contestant in the race was from Magnesia, the 8th with white horses, and Aenean, the 9th, came from Athens, and the 10th from Boeotia. And now the judges shuffled the lots. The chariots were lined up in order. A trumpet gave the signal, and all 10 stormed forward, shaking the reins and calling to their horses. The brazen chariots clanged, dust whirled from under the wheels, and no one spared the goad. Close behind every chariot were the swerving horses of the next. They were already started on the 7th round. Whenever Orestes circled the turning post, he almost touched it with the axle, for he had taken the curve very close by drawing tight the rein of the left horse and leaving slack that of the right. Up to this point, the chariots had all run smoothly, but now the hard-mouthed horses of the Aenean shied and ran against the chariot of one of the contestants from Libya. This one slip immediately caused the wildest confusion. Chariot crashed on chariot, and soon the field was covered with shattered cars. The Athenian was the only one wise enough to drive on the outer side of the course. He reined in his horse and left the clutter of chariots in the inner circle. Close behind him came Orestes. When he saw the tangle of men, beasts, and chariots, and realized that only the Athenian was left to compete with him, he beat his horses with the goad, and now both standing erect, the bold pair set out to finish the race. The turning post around which they had to drive for the last time was near. Orestes had made good progress on the long course. Overconfident in his luck, he gradually slackened the rein of the left horse too. This caused the animal to turn too soon. The axle barely grazed the post, but still the impact was so great that it broke. Orestes fell and was dragged along the ground. The moment he toppled from the chariot, his horses ran over the sand in frantic flight. The spectators screamed with pity, for the Argive now trailed on the earth, now hurtled through the air. At last, the other charioteer succeeded in stopping his horses and cutting him loose. But he was so disfigured and covered with blood that even his own friends would have not recognized the body. The Phoenicians quickly burned it on the pyre, and envoys from Phocis are on their way with an urn which contains his bones, so that they may be buried in his native earth. The messenger paused. Clytemnestra was shaken with conflicting emotions. She wanted to rejoice wholeheartedly at the death of her son, whose coming she had feared, but her mother's grief tempered the feeling of relief with the message that had been given her. Electra, on the other hand, felt nothing but boundless sorrow. "Where shall I flee?" she cried after Clytemnestra had taken the stranger from Phocis into the palace. "Now I am utterly alone. Now I must go on and on serving the murderers of my father. But I cannot. I will not live under the same roof with him any longer. Rather will I leave the palace and perish miserably, and if anyone within begrudges me this slow death, let him come out and kill me at once. Life can mean nothing but grief to me. Death is more than welcome." Gradually, she fell silent and gave herself up to dull despair. She must have been sitting on the marble steps of the palace for hours, her head bowed in her lap, when her younger sister, Chrysothemis, ran up to her and aroused her from her brooding. "Orestes has come," she cried. "He is just as alive as you or I." Electra raised her head and stared at her sister with wide open eyes. "Have you lost your wits, sister?" she asked. "Are you jeering at my sorrow and yours?" "I can only report what I found," said Chrysothemis, between smiles and tears. "Listen, and I shall tell you how I discovered the truth. When I came to my father's grave, overgrown with grass, I saw the tracings of fresh offering of milk and garlands of flowers. I looked around in terror and amazement, and when I had made sure that no one was there, I came closer. Then at the edge of the mound, I saw a lock of hair, newly cut, and suddenly, I hardly knew why, I thought of our brother Orestes, and I guessed that the lock must be his. I took it in my hand with tears of joy, and here it is. I am sure it must have been cut from his head." Electra shook her own head doubtfully. All she had heard seemed too vague and too fantastic. "I am sorry for you because you are so credulous," she said to her sister. "But then you do not know what I know." And now she had told her sister everything she had heard from the Phocian, and at every word Chrysothemis grew sadder and sadder until she joined in her sister's lament. "The lock," said Electra, "is probably from the head of some friend who offered it up for dead Orestes at his father's grave." But in spite of her bitterness and unbelief, Electra had gained control of herself while she spoke to her sister, and now she proposed that since the last hope of vengeance by the hand of Orestes was gone, the two girls together should do the great deed and kill Aegisthus, the murderer. "Think well, Chrysothemis. You cling to life and its joys. Do not imagine that Aegisthus will ever permit us to marry and bring forth children who could be future avengers of Agamemnon. But if you do, as I say, you will prove your faithfulness to your father and brother, win glory, live in freedom, and be happy with a husband worthy of you and your line. For who would not be glad to court the daughter of so noble a house? And all the world will praise what we have done. At the feast and in the assembly we shall be honored for a deed brave enough for a man. Give me your help. Save me. Save yourself from the joyless and humiliating life we are leading." But Chrysothemis regarded the plan her sister had unfolded with such passionate intensity as unwise, incautious, and unfeasible. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.